Good morning and welcome to this new session about Judith and Holofernes by Donatello. Last week we introduced this culture and we introduced the Renaissance idea of mankind. This week we are going to try to explain the meaning of that sculpture in his philosophical context, because actually the meaning of Judith and Holofernes is strictly linked to the interesting of his owner, Cosimo de' Medici, in philosophy, in Renaissance philosophy, and actually in a very ancient form of philosophy named alchemy, that during Renaissance was reconsidered very strongly. The relationship of Cosimo de' Medici with Marsilio Ficino, that in some way is one of the most important figure of Renaissance and humanism philosophy, and consequently the relationship of Cosimo de' Medici with Donatello are elements strictly linked to each other. So I'm not sure that you know Paul Oscar Cristella. Maybe you know. He was one of the greatest scholars about Renaissance. Eugenio Garen also. And Cristella argued that in order to understand, to comprehend the Renaissance in its entirety, in his real meaning, we must not only examine the economical, political, and artistic perspective. Actually, we also have to understand the philosophical thought that shaped the background. The most important discipline that shaped every other field was philosophy, actually. And the primary philosopher of Quattrocento Florence was Marsilio Ficino. If you check your PDF, you can find his picture as well. So, Marsilio Ficino have a very strict relationship with Cosimo de' Medici. Under Cosimo de' Medici, do you remember him? We talked about him last week. He was the Lord of Florence. Under Cosimo de' Medici rule, Florence became the center of humanism. Cosimo advocated the dissemination of Platonic philosophy, which was drowned by the eras dominating by Aristotle's philosophy, actually. Cosimo de' Medici became Ficino's patron. And to Ficino, he was more than just a patron. Ficino called Cosimo as his spiritual father. He claimed to have been reborn under Cosimo's direction, who had assigned Ficino such a task as a translation of Plato's works and the Corpus Hermeticum. Corpus Hermeticum is a body of theological and philosophical texts written in late antiquity, but long believed to much older. Please check the PDF, you can find a picture. This corpus became a reference text during Renaissance. So Cosimo asked to Marsilio Ficino to translate this text. This text contains very old and very ancient knowledge about theology and philosophy, and during Renaissance, this text translated become very popular. One of the three forms of knowledge treated in Corpus Hermeticum, it is the alchemy. This discipline was aimed to discover the most hidden, holy, if you want, the divine part of the self within us, bringing us to the enlightenment. So in some way, the topic was how to discover your real self, how to discover the real divine, the real precious, the real holy part, the most deep part of yourself. Alchemy uses an analogy to describe the passage of the transformation of the soul. So, Corpus Hermeticum, using a code, because actually it was designated for initiated people, a sort of sacred text, for sort of hidden text, just for people that was really interested in this topic. How to say, if you want to consider like Shingon Buddhism, for example. So Corpus Hermeticum describe how to, in some way, to discover your true soul. Well, in the alchemy, it uses an analogy to describe the passage of the transformation of soul. The transmutation of base metals, such as lead or copper, into silver or gold. This transmutation happens following three basic stages. The first one is called nigredo, or blackness. The second one is called albedo, or whiteness. The third is called rubedo, redness. Okay, so black, white, red. Actually, there are more stages in the transmutation process, but we focus on the basic one. Okay, black, white, red. You know, the black in some way is linked to something that is not pure. White is linked to something that is pure, and red is something that, how to say, that's something that successful, some good result. Also in Japan, red is something lucky color, right? Well, nigredo actually, or blackness, in the alchemical sense, in fact, indeed means putrefaction, decomposition. It means something that you have to purify. So in this first stage, your soul have to be purified. Putrefaction destroys the whole nature and form of your soul, of your knowledge. It transmutes them into a new state of being to give them a totally new fruit, new result, new approach. Everything that has life dies. Everything that is dead putrefies and finds a new life, new status, where the initiate is able to enjoy his knowledge and self-realization. Please look at the picture. In the picture you can find a sort of, big pan with a strong fire. This fire in some ways, of course, is destroying fire, but is good because he's purifying your soul. Something new. So the transmutations process involves three primal alchemical properties: salt, mercury, and sulfur. Ficino, in his De Vita Celitus Comparanda, that is one of the most important work of reference for Renaissance, mention about it. Let's read it together, and after that I will explain you, okay? If there were only these two things in the universe, on one side the intellect, and on the other side the body, but no soul, then neither would the intellect be attracted to the body, for intellect is absolutely motionless, without affect, which is the principle of motion. And very far away from the body, nor would the body be drawn to the intellect. For body is in itself powerless, unsuited for motion, and far removed from the intellect. But if a soul which conforms to both were placed between them, an attraction will easily occur to each one on either side. It means soul needs. Soul creates motion, movement, energy. In the first place, soul is led most easily of all, since she is the primum mobile and movable of herself, of her own accord. Moreover, since, as I have said, she is the mean of things. Soul is the mean of things. In her own fashion she contains all things, and is proportional near to both. Therefore, she is equally connected with everything, even with those things which are at a distance from one another, because they are not at a distance from her. For besides the fact that on the one side she conforms to the divine, and on the other side to the transient, and even turns to each by desire, at the same time she is wholly and simultaneously everywhere. Ficino is talking about the soul. In addition, the world soul possesses by divine power precisely as many seminal reasons of things as there are ideas in the divine mind. By these seminal reasons, she fashions the same number of species in matter. That is why every single species corresponds through its own seminal reason to its own idea, and oftentimes through this reason it can easily receive something from the idea, since indeed it was made through the reason from the idea. Please don't worry about this point. This is why, if any time the species degenerates from its proper form, it can be formed again with the reason as the proximate intermediary, and through the idea as intermediary, can then be easily reformed. And if in the proper manner you bring to bear on a species or on some individual in it many things which are dispersed but which conform to the same idea into this material, thus suitably adapting, you will soon draw a particular gift from the idea through the seminal reason of the soul. For properly speaking, it is not intellect itself which is led, but soul. And so let no one think that any divinity is wholly separate from matter, or being attracted by any given mundane materials. But the demons, please remember this name, demons, rather are being attracted and gifts from the ensouled world and from the living stars. Again, let no man wonder that soul can be allured as it were by material forms, since indeed she herself has created baits of this kind suitable to herself, to be allured thereby, and she always unwillingly doeth in them. There is nothing to be found in this whole living world, so the form that soul does not attend, that a gift of the soul is not in it. Therefore, Zoroaster was a prophet. At the beginning, we believe that he was the author of Corpus Hermeticum, called such a correspondence of form to the reason existing in the world soul divine lures. And Synesius corroborated that they are magical baits. Finally, let no one believe that absolutely all gifts are drawn from the soul to any one particular species of matter at a specific time, but rather, at the right moment, only those gifts or that one seed from which such a species has grown, and of seeds that are similar to it. Accordingly, the person, please be careful, pay attention, the person who has employed only human things will thus claim for himself not the gifts proper to fish or to birds, but the human gifts as similar ones. But if they employs things which pertain to such and such a star and demon, he undergoes the peculiar influence of these stars and demon, like a piece of wood treated with sulfur for a flame that is everywhere present. And he undergoes this influence not only through the rays of the star and the demon themselves, but also through the very soul of the world, everywhere present. For the reason of any star and demon flourishes in her. It is partly a seminal reason so that she can generate, and partly an exemplary reason so that she can know. For according to the more ancient Platonists, Cosimo has said in some way want to disseminate Plato's philosophy instead of Aristotle's philosophy. For according to the more ancient Platonists, from her reasons, soul reasons, the world soul constructed in the heavens beside the stars, figures and such part of them as are also themselves figure of a sort, and she impressed property on all this. In the stars, moreover, in their figures, part and properties, are contained all the species of things below and their properties. Okay, so here Ficino is talking about, in some way, the structure of human being: intellect, body, soul. Soul is the holy part of the human being. There is a sort of world soul, something of divine essence, divine energy through the world, all over around the world, and every human being has a part of it. In some way, the alchemical process is to consisting to become in some way conscious, to get knowledge of this holy part. Following the soul in some way, you can find your holy part, the holy part within you, within us, the truth in ourselves, our own true soul, which is connected, which is a part of the world soul. But how we can do it? He talked about the stars and demon. Demon is a Plato's concept, actually. In idea of Plato's, actually Plato's make talk about it by Socrates. Demon is something, a sort of spirit, Holy Spirit inside of us, like a sort of spiritual, intuitive guide, inner guide. He's the true voice within you. That is in contrast with what? With the reason. So, in some way, to discover our true nature, our true soul, our holy part, we have to kill. Of course, it's just a symbol. We have to kill our head. Head is a symbol of rational, of reason, of thinking. But the demon is not thinking. It's something intuition, something that comes from the deep part of us, something come from unconscious. Thinking is not unconscious, it's conscious. It's something logical one. So there is a contrast between something intuition and something logical, something thinking, something that you think about. So, in a way, listen your inner intuitive voice, demon. In this case, demon is very good meaning. It's not devil. It's not something bad, something evil. Actually, it's conscious. It's something that comes from your unconscious, something very wise, your holy wise part, something that is hidden in the the deepest part of you, of which you have a memory. Plato said from your previous life, because actually Plato's philosophy included the rebirth. So step by step, life after life, you have memory of your previous life. Okay, so demon is your holy, deep. Is the voice from your holy, deep part. Something like sixth sense, something intuitive that talk from your unconscious, and you have to listen it, killing the reason. Not for chance. In alchemy, sulfur, we said salt, mercury, sulfur. Sulfur is represented the soul. And so Ficino mentioned person undergoes the peculiar influence of this star and demon like a piece of wood treated with sulfur for a flame. So your soul burning, killing something rational, something that is not intuitive, something that in some way is not true, burning can purify itself and discover your true soul, your true essence. So please watch the picture. Also, it's not for chance that in alchemy, one of the representations of Nigredo, I repeat, is the first stage of, alchemical process. So the stage where soul burn the false knowledge, the logical knowledge, something that is something rational, from reason, and not from your unconscious. The symbol of Nigredo, of this first stage, is decapitation. And you know that Judith and Holofernes is actually a decapitation. Cutting of head. Head is the symbol of reason, of thinking, of logical one. But you cannot find your soul if you think by brain, by head. So it needs, of course, you don't have to cut your head. It's just a symbol, that something that is a way you have to discover your own hidden true soul. You have to cut logical thinking way and consider your demon. So please watch both pictures. You can find the cutting of the head in Aurora Consurgence, that is a representation of Nigredo stage, and Judith and Holofernes. It exists a very interesting book called The Planets Within. I suggest you to read. It is a book by Thomas More. Thomas More is actually a psychoanalyst, Jungian, and this book, The Planets Within, treats about Italian Renaissance as one of the most psychological moments of the pre-scientific age, focusing on Marsilio Ficino as a master of the interior life. In the book, Moore mentioned about a necessary madness. Necessary madness. What is madness, usually? Of course, it's a sickness, but it's a mental sickness, right? It means that something that does not follow the usual thinking way, the logical thinking way, the rational thinking way. So in some way, the necessary madness, the madness in this case is the dissolution of reason. And this madness comes by wine and drunkenness. The element wine is an image for those things which break up the literal perspective. In Ficino's image of the aroma of wine, one might imagine having wine on your head. Would you keep that aroma with your fully consciousness? Although wine affects the soul and goes to the head, in Italian language we say the smoke of alcohol go to the head. So it's a way you cannot think clearly. Your mind became like a foggy, so you cannot use your mind anymore. You cannot use your head anymore, your reason. You are not logical anymore. It's something that comes natural wine. The aroma of wine, Thomas More said, is more suited to the nature of the soul itself, invisible but perceptible and infectious. In classical Rome, and you know that Renaissance refers to Greeks and Romans, In classical Rome, it was believed that wine was the very self of life. Onions scholar observed that wine was believed to go to the head, literally, where the daimons resides. Greeks and Romans used to say in vino veritas. In vino veritas. Do you know the meaning? In wine there is truth. It means when you stop to think something logical, something rational, you can find your truth, your own truth. Therefore, wine was good for knowledge. And indeed, the Romans had a custom of smearing wine on the temples, and it's a practice that Ficino recommends in his book The Planets. You know that Dionysus was the ancient Greek god of wine. His Roman name was Bacchus. Mysterious cults called Bacchanalia linked to him exist at the same time as regular religious practice, such as a sort of a festival. The mystery brought one into close contact with the divine. The Bacchic mystery had two attractions for initiates: renewal after a release from madness and the promise of an afterlife. Afterlife means immortal life. It cannot exist in a material world, in a body world. It can exist only in a soul, in a spiritual meaning, right? So, Dionysus is generally associated with madness. Both the frenzy that descends upon his worshippers and as a god able to cure madness. But the Bacchic rites cure suffering and affliction on the mind with the divine madness, allowing initiates to express their emotion, their feelings. If you express your emotion and your feeling, it means you recognize your emotion and your feeling. You recognize what you really need, not what you think you need, but what you really need. It can happen sometimes that what you think that you want and what you really want is different, because inside of you there is a sort of head part, rational part, and something emotional, intuitive, something unconscious knowledge, something. So please consider, maybe it happens in your life, something like that you believe that you want something, but after you got it, you realize that it is not the real goal. So there is sort of contrast. So this expressing emotion in the frenzy. So the frenzy is considered a divine revelation. A direct express of Dionysus, of the god, perhaps even possession. So the other author of the rite is the hope for a blissful afterlife, as opposed to reincarnation or unconscious existence in Hades. Hades was the underworld in Greek and Roman religion. So please watch picture of Dionysus. I selected this picture from Roma. This picture is in Palazzo Tempi in Roma. Dionysus Bacchus actually here, but the same, is god of wine, of ecstasy. Don't think anymore. In vino veritas, in wine there is the truth. So something that you really want, something conscious, come out when you are drunk, right? Because you cannot think clearly. So his gesture is very relaxed, and he's keeping a grape in his hand, the symbol of wine, because wine comes from grape plant. And satyr is close to him. Satyr was a sort of spirit in Greek and Roman religion, something that comes from unconscious willing is not good, some unconscious expression, something linked to the animal, to the wild part of you, not logical, not educated, not cultivated, something that is very wild. Sometimes satyr was, dressed up like an animal, actually. So Dionysus, Bacchus, is the symbol of ecstasy. It means some not clear mind, not thinking way, not head, but something that comes from the deep part of you. If you watch this sarcophagus from the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, you can find some similarities to the triangle base of Judith and Holofernes. We talked last week, do you remember? There's a triangle, and the triangle you find what? Bacchanalia. Bacchanalia, that, I repeat, there was the Dionysus Bacchus Matsuri, in some way, festival, celebration, when people get drunk with a secret worship that only initiates intended to approach can be discovered. And do you remember that in some way you have to turn around of the basis to understand. So if you watch the basis of Judith and Holofernes, you find Bacchus and the sort of, dance and drunken celebration, because drunkenness here is the wreath, is the way for freedom from thinking, from logical, from head. Well, thus Cosimo de' Medici was deeply interested in alchemy. He studied about it. He was strictly linked to Ficino. And actually, Cosimo de' Medici commissioned Judith and Holofernes to Donatello. Someone said that Judith and Holofernes represent the new republic in humanism Renaissance, and he wants to celebrate this part. But actually, originally, the sculpture was originally commissioned by Cosimo de' Medici not for a public square, but for a garden, a private garden, a garden of Palazzo Medici Ricciardi. Later, the sculpture was brought in Signoria Square, in Piazza della Signoria in Florence. So, in consideration of what we talk about today. Assyrian art try to describe the meaning of the sculpture Judith and Holofernes by Donatello, and try to explain the face expression of Holofernes and Judith, considering that decapitation is a passage, is a stage that brings to the connection to the true, to your own soul. And try to consider that Cosimo de' Medici was the owner who commissioned this sculpture to Donatello.